The Veryan Women's Institute hut disaster. Close to the path that borders the eastern corner of our village pond, there lies a level plinth, 5 meters wide and 12 meters long, carefully disguised so as not to arouse the curiosity of the visitors. They wander past, attracted by the tranquility of the water, the stark elevation of the church, the laughter of the children playing in the park, quite unaware of the mystery that lies embedded in that plinth, a mystery as inaccessible as any held within the deserted stone circles planted across our moors. It was on that plinth, within a makeshift wooden hut, that for the best part of the last century some women of the parish set about building Jerusalem. A brave task, you might say, to attempt in such modest accommodation. But they weren't no ordinary women, I'll tell 'ee. Spellbinding, that's what they were, there in that hut, in all their brightly coloured frocks and skirts and matching hats, wearing strings of white pearls around fresh-scrubbed rosy necks. One played the piano, while the others sang their song about building Jerusalem. And if they lacked anything in tunefulness, they more'n made up for that in enthusiasm. Only heart and soul in everything was going to make Jerusalem a possibility. And for all the importance of the talks and demonstrations and instructions they received at their meetings, it was the competition that held the whole ideal together. The best decorated thimble, the most unusual egg cup. How many items can you get into one small matchbox? 168 was my mother's record, each item listed on a sheet of paper. She took a month to reach that figure, chopping and changing the pieces with a pair of tweezers till she couldn't fit in no more. Came first by 11 items, then put the matchbox and pepper safely at the back of a drawer in case the same competition came up in 10 years' time. The breadth of their vision was boundless, but if the task they had set was extensive, they had energy to match and enough enthusiasm to make a big-time hero quake. Dr. Keith Scott, captain of the England rugby team, came to that hut one night to give a talk on first aid. "Those bloody women," he said, "clustered around that bloody piano were a damn sight more intimidating than 50,000 bloody Welshmen at the Cardiff Arms Park." Delegations were sent to that hut each year to national assemblies in London, where any prime minister out of step with their demands was scorned and derided. My own mother was one of a gang of 'em who, resplendent in brand new expensive hats, frocks, pearls and high-heel shoes, stormed the gardens of Buckingham Palace and surrounded a terrified Duke of Edinburgh. That hut had empowered the women more'n anything since Boadicea stuck blades on her chariot wheels and drove hell for leather through the ranks of the Roman soldiers. Veryan men were reduced to nothing more'n unpaid taxi drivers, having to drop whatever they were doing and carry the women to the meetings, and be there on time 2 hours later to fetch 'em home. Even the heroes of Joe Chanel's thrashing gang would utter strangely compliant "yes, dears," and "no, dears," when in their company. The one certainty about Jerusalem was that the women was going to be in charge. And then they disappeared altogether one dark night, that hut and all they women. We woke up next morning and there they were, clean gone. Probably the biggest mystery ever to occur within the bounds of the parish. The official line, of course, spoke of it being in such a bad state of repair that it had to be demolished on safety grounds. But nobody didn't believe that. Buildings don't just get demolished overnight without a trace of some debris being left in the morning. And that don't explain the sudden disappearance of the old ladies. The rumour soon spread that the ladies' activities had got out of hand. They were getting too powerful, too organised, and a group of local vigilantes had got rid of them all under cover of darkness. But I can't believe that, 'cause frightening as they might have been, they were still the best cake and pasty makers in the village. That surely would have saved them from being wiped out from within. If it had been anyone, it would have been the SAS under the authority of Westminster. But who would have risked the reputation of their crack troops on such a dangerous operation? Risked headlines in the paper like SAS held hostage by Veryan WI. Negotiations continue. Then news began to spread around about a whirlwind that came through the village and swept up that hut clean as a whistle and carried away with all the women inside. 2 independent sightings confirmed it. The first was from a man leaving the New Inn at 12:21. The second was from another man leaving the New Inn at 12:21. Both were certain that they heard the faint notes of Jerusalem fading away as the object spiralled off into space, up above the trees over Trist House. Once news began to filter out, the roads became gridlocked with the cars of the hundreds of sightseers who came to gawk at our calamity. The parish council held an on-site crisis meeting and decided with a stroke of genius to conceal the empty plinth under a black rubber coating and place a weathered netball post at one end. The television companies were going to put out a national appeal to raise money for relatives of those lost in the Veryan Women's Institute hut disaster, till most of the men said that they were better off without 'em. I'm ashamed to say that the rest of the village was inclined to agree. By Sunday morning the vicar was praising God for sending the whirlwind, and the congregation replied with a rousing Amen. Now the incident is mostly forgotten about. A youthful group of ladies carry on the singing and the competitions within the more respectable surroundings of the village hall, where people can keep an eye on them. That there whirlwind, people say, was the best thing that ever happened to the place. But I've been troubled lately with such dismissive talk, 'cause that mystery still haven't been solved. We all have got a bit of peace for the moment, but for how long? My fear is that if any of we Veryan men, through the grace of God and the efforts of Father Doug, should be fortunate enough to reach heaven, there won't be no golden gates for us to enter, or mansions with marble floors. All we shall find will be that old hut with a sign over the door saying Veryan men only, wipe your feet before you come in. And when we've plucked up enough courage to creep inside, we shan't find no exotic heavenly host all clad in white and winged and singing in harmonies as sweet as honey. What we shall find there will be those same old ladies crowded round a piano, singing that same old song with twice the enthusiasm and 4 times the volume. They'll still be wearing strings of pearls around fresh scrubbed rosy necks, and be dressed in multicoloured frocks and skirts and blouses. But they won't have no hats, 'cause on top of their heads they'll each be wearing their own hand-knitted halo. And behind them, running right down through the 12-metre length of that hut, 'll be 2 rows of trestle tables. One'll be loaded down with an endless supply of pasties, piping hot and perfectly baked. The other row will be covered with a multitude of various tiny items and a stack of empty matchboxes at one end. The task for we Veryan men, while we munch they pasties, will be to get 180 items into one small matchbox. With our big clumsy fingers, our failing eyesight and our lack of patience, we never will, of course. Eternity won't be long enough. And all the while, they cheerful, bloody women will just keep on singing.